The chalk talk. Chalk referring to ownership, and that's so key to make sure you're not just plugging in the 30% owned guys all across your lineup, because otherwise there's no way to differentiate and get yourself toward the top. I mean, for example, last week, Dalvin Cook, 40% owned, didn't do shit. And ultimately, fading him was a huge way to get a leg up on the competition at that price range, especially the amount that you paid for him and the pathetic points that you ended up getting. You got to know who's going to be chalky, at least to decide which ones am I pivoting from, which ones am I eating. I had Cook. I couldn't get away from him last week. But let's look this week at who's the highest owns and who I'm going to fade versus go after. David Montgomery is coming in at, and I use Fantasy Points. They're one of my favorite sites out there. Great overall content, especially DFS. But David Montgomery, 5,500, great price, 31% projected, easiest potential matchup against Detroit. I totally get why that price, that matchup, why it would be the highest owned. He should have a solid day. Has 20-point upside. I totally get it. I'm fading, though. Fuck David Montgomery. He's useless. He's faced Detroit before and did like 8 points in that contest. There's so many other middle-priced running backs we'll talk about soon. I have no interest in David Montgomery. If I'm going to eat chalk, I want the guy that is ridiculous talent and a great matchup like that you just can't be without. And that's not David Montgomery to me. So I'm going to fade David Montgomery. I, again, understand all the reasons why it's a great price and a high-owned play, but he's not a guy that I want. I'll pay up for Taylor or Kenyan Drake at 5,700. I'll match him with Booker at 5,500, more reception upside. I'm going to fade away from that chalk to separate myself. Cash game, totally get it. But if we're going for GPPs, which is what this show is based upon, no interest in Montgomery. As well as Brandin Cooks, 5,600, 27% projected. I'm fading that. Not into it. I get it. No Will Fuller. He's already had the most targets on the team. There's no one else to throw to. Cooks could absolutely explode. And at this price, 30 points, a very real possibility. But I don't find myself going to that many receivers in this range. I'm either paying down real bad, like Perriman, like 3,900, or I'm paying up to Adams, A.J. Brown. In this range, I love Robert Woods too at 5,900. I think you could get your 25, 30-point Robert Woods day. If I can find that extra 300, I'd much rather have Robert Woods against Arizona. He's going to roast them. Or maybe down to Chark as a low-owned play, 5,400, 3% ownership coming in right now. Glennon looked like he can really rope that thing still. Again, relatively to Glennon's skill set here. But I don't mind Chark if I'm paying down just to avoid the chalk of Cooks. I get it. Again, number one target of a great quarterback. But I think this offense as a whole is really going to struggle. I think defenses are going to put all the coverage they need to get Cooks out of the game because who's left behind him? Cutie, Coulter? Like, let those guys beat you and take out Cooks is what I think will be the Colts' approach and really everybody's approach from here on out. And we alluded to the big backs like Cook and Henry, 25%. There's no way I'm going to ever argue that Cook or Henry aren't going to eat. They're monsters. Ekeler, 23%. Of those three, I find myself landing Ekeler. One, because he's $2,000 less dollars than both those guys. But two, I love his upside against the Pats. Not a great run D, but also the 11 targets in 2 full games with Herbert. I think he's right back in line for another 8 to 11 catches, no doubt about it. So I'll get off the Cook and Henry train if it means getting Ekeler. And I also love getting Chubb, as I said, at a third of the ownership of Cook, of Henry. Give that to me all day, or getting Adams as well. $9,000. A lot of people are going to be off of him so that they can afford a Henry, afford a Cook. And it makes total sense again. But I think Adams will go slightly under owned. We got Slay banged up right now. Maybe he won't play. And not that Slay's going to stop Adams. He couldn't stop DK. It wasn't even close. And Adams is even better. I love DK too, but come on. Adams is the best receiver in the league. He's going to put up 30 potentially. And if everybody's all in on Cook and Henry and you go to the lower owned Adams at 9K, I love it. And there's so many good mid-price running backs that that's the move that I find myself most often doing. And the last high chalked person, these ones actually kind of surprised me that Denzel Mims and Kiki Cutie were projected around 20%. Come on, get out of here. No thanks. If I'm going down at receiver, it's going to be Perriman, 3,900 all day, especially if he ends up coming in lower than Mims at $200 in lower ownership. That doesn't make much sense to me. It could be a misprint by the ownership protections I use. But if I'm going bargain receiver at that price range, it's Perriman all day, 3,900. So I would be fading that if that ends up being the chalk there. What is up, you fantasy wolf? Thanks so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, share your thoughts in the comments, check out some more videos, and join the newest Wolfpack by subscribing below.